Hi everyone. Today's tall tale, Buffalo Song, again inspired by something real that happened, but then people talked about it and the tale grew and grew. Buffalo Song is written by Joseph Bruchac and illustrated by Bill Farnsworth. Long ago, there were no buffalo on earth. Sun Buffalo Cow looked down from the sky and saw that the humans were suffering. I will go and change into Earth Buffalo, she sang. I will be meat for my Indian people. Her words were heard by the humans below. The Sun Buffalo Cow ran along the trail that led to the cliff. She leaped from that high place to the foot of the cliff far below. The people came along and saw the dead buffalo. Our mother has spoken truly, they said. Here is food for us. Then they heard the sound of hooves rumbling like thunder. They looked out and saw great herds of buffalo covering the earth. It was a dark day in 1873. On the grassy floor of the canyon, a buffalo calf pressed her nose against her mother's flank. The thunder sounds were gone, along with the men in their wagons. All the other animals in the small herd lay still on the earth around her. Their sheltered place in the mountains had not protected them. The hunters had taken only the tongues of the buffalo they killed. The calf had come from the brush where she had lain hidden. Her mother was the oldest cow and the leader of the herd. She was the one who had always guided the herd away from danger. The calf nudged her mother again, but the large cow did not move. Night came, and the calf huddled close to her mother's cold side. The sun rose and set 2 times before a horse carrying 2 Nez Perce riders came into the canyon. The hooves of the Appaloosa did not clatter on the rocks, for it did not wear the iron shoes of a white man's horse. The boy looked around from behind his father, saddened but not surprised at what he saw. Just then the buffalo calf lifted her head. She was so weak from hunger, she could neither stand nor run away. The boy leaped down and ran to the calf's side, cradling her head in his lap. This one still lives, he said. Can we help her, father? The boy's father, 2 swans, climbed down from his horse's back and let the reins trail on the ground. He put his hand on his son's shoulder and squeezed it gently. Red Elk, a little one like this takes much care, he said. We have a long way to go, and this calf is too weak to travel with us. Red Elk looked up at his father with pleading eyes. 2 swans smiled. All right, my son, we will not leave her, he said. I have a friend who lives near here. He has been gathering together such orphans to help the buffalo people survive. His hope is that our children's grandchildren will hear their hoofs thunder across the plains again. His name is Walking Coyote. He will be glad to see this little one. 2 swans slid his arms under the calf and carried her to his horse. The horse stood quietly as he placed the calf along its back and then climbed on. Red Elk vaulted up behind his father. They rode in the direction of the sunset toward the mountains. The sun was in the middle of the sky when 2 swans and Red Elk reached a camp in the shadow of the highest point in the mountains. The scent of other buffalo reached the calf's nose. She struggled to raise her head and look. With the help of his son, 2 swans lowered the calf to the ground and placed her on her wobbly legs. There, in a corral made of brush and saplings tied together, was a handful of other buffalo calves. A man standing by the corral's entrance raised a hand in greeting. Behind the corral was a small shelter where a woman and a teenage boy were cooking their midday meal over a fire. The woman and boy stayed where they were as the man walked forward. 2 swans, the man called. It's good to see you. Walking Coyote, my old friend. Good to see you too, 2 swans replied. He took Walking Coyote's hand. My son found another orphan for you to add to your family. Hunters got her herd. She's the last. As Walking Coyote approached, the calf lowered her head and tried to stomp her hoof in defiance, but the calf's legs were too weak and she stumbled. Only Red Elk's quick motion to grab the calf prevented her from falling. Walking Coyote reached out his left hand to stroke the calf. As he did so, Red Elk saw a braided bracelet of buffalo tail hairs on the man's wrist. My young friend, Walking Coyote said, When I was 4 winters old, I saw my first herd of buffalo. I was riding with my uncle. We came to a hill in Sinya-Lemon, our surrounded valley on the other side of these mountains. The whole earth was black with buffalo. The herd stretched from one horizon to another. That was almost 30 years ago. Have you ever seen anything like that? Red Elk shook his head no. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Walking Coyote said. I've never forgotten it. Walking Coyote slid the buffalo hair bracelet from his wrist and placed it in the boy's hand. This is to help you remember what I saw. There was no need for Red Elk to speak words other than words of thanks. Walking Coyote knew what was in his heart. Red Elk walked back to his father, who reached down to pull his son up behind him on their horse. Without looking back, they rode away. Walking Coyote lifted the calf and carried her toward the corral. She struggled weakly until he began to sing in a soft voice, "Hetcha hey, hetcha ho, hetcha hey, hey, yay ho." The Walking Coyote placed the calf gently on her feet in the corral. She leaned against him, lightly thumping her foot on the ground. "You are a brave one, my little Thunderhoof," Walking Coyote said. "Your buffalo people kept my people alive. You gave us food and shelter. Now it's my turn to help you. I'm going to take you and the others across the mountains. The Black Robe Fathers, the Catholic priests at St. Ignatius Mission, have good pasture land. They care about our souls. Surely they will care for you, who make our spirits stronger." Walking Coyote's wife brought over a bowl and placed it in front of little Thunderhoof. "This is my wife Mary," Walking Coyote told the calf. "You better thank her. This was her idea too. Mary, tell this little one what you said to me." Mary smiled and looked at her husband. "The buffalo that our Salish people love will soon be gone. We are sad because of that. You capture what calves you can and take them to our people. When they see buffalo, they'll be glad." The teenage boy came and stood beside the calf. "This is our son, Blanket Hawk," Walking Coyote said. Blanket Hawk gently pressed the calf's nose down toward the bowl, which held a watery mixture of porridge and roots. As the scent of the food filled the calf's nostrils, she lowered her head and began to eat. Walking Coyote watched and nodded in approval. "By the time the snow leaves the passes," he said, "you'll be ready to journey over the mountains." The sun rose and set many times. Little Thunderhoof grew strong and began playing with the other calves. As they butted heads and chased after one another, it became clear to Walking Coyote, Mary, and Blanket Hawk that little Thunderhoof was taking control as the leader of their small herd. All the calves knew and trusted the 3 humans who were caring for them, but they did not come when they were called until little Thunderhoof led them. "Little Thunderhoof, it's a good thing you've become a leader of your people," Walking Coyote said. "We'll need your help to get all of you safely across the mountains. It's not going to be an easy journey." By midsummer, the moon when buffalo shed their winter coats, more buffalo calf orphans had been brought to Walking Coyote. The little herd now numbered 9, 5 bull calves and 4 cow calves. Early one morning, Walking Coyote looked up at the high mountains and then at the small herd that had come up to the edge of the corral. "My friends, it's a fine day for us to travel," Walking Coyote said. Blanket Hawk came to the corral and reached out a hand to stroke the nose of little Thunderhoof. "I've scouted ahead," he said. "I know the way well. I've found water for you to drink, grass for you to eat, and places where you can shelter for the night." Mary laughed. "If you keep talking to the calves, we'll still be here at nightfall. Let's go." Mary pulled aside the brush that blocked the corral's entrance. Led by little Thunderhoof, the herd came trotting out. They followed their human protectors up the slope that led to the mountain passes. The trail was difficult. There were places where they had to wade through streams or climb over fallen trees. Sometimes Walking Coyote and Mary had to carry the smallest calves or sling them over the back of a pack horse when their legs grew too tired to carry them any farther. At night, when they made camp, Walking Coyote spoke to little Thunderhoof and all the other calves. "Be watchful, little ones," he said. "There are wolves and mountain lions here who may catch your scent." Then he sang his song to calm the calves and give them courage. "Hetcha hey, hetcha ho, hetcha hey, yeah ho." For the first 2 nights all went well, but on the 3rd day, as they neared a high pass, wolf eyes watched them from behind the small pines. The way was steep, and one of the smaller calves fell behind. The lone wolf crept closer. Little Thunderhoof lifted her head to sniff the wind. Catching a scent that meant danger, she turned and charged down the hill. The wolf had cornered the small calf against a rock outcropping. Little Thunderhoof lowered her head and thudded her hoof hard on the earth. The wolf turned and ran down the mountain. Walking Coyote and Blanket Hawk watched, smiles on their faces as the wolf disappeared around the slope. Little Thunderhoof, Blanket Hawk said, hugging the calf, you have the heart of a leader indeed. Little Thunderhoof nuzzled Blanket Hawk's face. Then she turned and butted her head against the side of the small calf, herding it back up toward the others. More days passed, and the herd began its descent down the western side of the mountains. The path was steep and rocky. As they made their way along a narrow ridge, Little Thunderhoof turned and looked up, stomping her hoof. A distant rumbling began to grow louder. The mountain growled. The earth started to shake beneath them. Landslide, Mary shouted. She waved her arms and drove the calves after Little Thunderhoof, who was leading them toward a great rock that might provide shelter. Blanket Hawk and Walking Coyote each grabbed a small calf from the edge of the ridge. Loose earth and huge boulders cascaded past them in a waterfall of stones. When all was calm, Walking Coyote counted heads. One of the bull calves was gone, carried away by the rock slide. Had it not been for Little Thunderhoof, several more calves could have been lost. Walking Coyote's heart was filled with hope as he led the little herd toward St. Ignatius Mission. We do not want to part with you, he told the buffalo calves, but my family is poor. I will give you to the black-robed fathers. They will take good care of you. But the priests at the mission did not want Walking Coyote's animals. I thought they would understand how the buffalo strengthen our spirit, Walking Coyote said sadly. Don't worry, Mary replied. Our Salish people who live near here will be glad to see the buffalo. They will help us care for them. Sure enough, as word of the arrival of the buffalo calves spread through the valley, people were happy. A feast was given for Walking Coyote, Mary, and Blanket Hawk. Our brother and his family have brought us a gift, the Salish chief said. Life was not easy for Walking Coyote and his family. Driving the herd from pasture to pasture as the seasons changed took all their time and energy. One winter came and then another. The buffalo calves grew into adults. In the third spring after crossing into the valley, Little Thunderhoof and 3 other cows all gave birth to calves. The buffalo roamed free, and Walking Coyote was glad to see the herd grow larger with each passing year. Walking Coyote's own family grew larger too. He and Mary had 3 daughters. They worked hard over the years, but still they were poor. It was now 1884. My buffalo children, we need help, Walking Coyote said. If only we could find someone else who remembers how beautiful it was when the buffalo people blanketed the plains. Mikel Pablo was such a person. His father was Mexican and his mother a Piegan Indian. He had come to the valley to work many years ago and had become a wealthy rancher. On his rides through the countryside, he had often seen Walking Coyote's herd. The sight of it made him feel good in his heart. He went to Walking Coyote with an offer. I like your dream of bringing back the buffalo, Mikel Pablo said. Our valley is a good place for a herd. We have wide pastures, shelter from the winter storms, and plenty of Indian people who love these animals. Let me buy your herd from you. It was hard for Walking Coyote to part with the buffalo who had been with his family for so long, but finally he sighed and nodded. My friend, Walking Coyote said, I will trust you with my children.